dedicated to each and every one of you who appreciate a great glass of wine. You know what I mean?
It's Monday. Let's raise a glass to the beginning of another week. It's time to unscrew, uncork, or saber a bottle, and let's begin exploring the wine glass. The statistics all state that wine consumption is decreasing. According to Statista, wine consumption has dropped 6.75% since 2019. And the International Organization of Vine and Wine says that wine consumption has dropped 2.6% just in this past year. In fact, global wine consumption has reached its lowest point since 1996. Enter the world of de-alcoholized wine. Fact.MR has predicted that non-alcohol wine will increase its market substantially in the next 10 years, from $2.57 billion to $6.94 billion. And in the forefront of this massive trend is Giesen Wines in New Zealand. I had the pleasure to sit down with Duncan Shouler, Director of Innovation, to discuss the process and their goals for this line. While you're listening, it would be greatly appreciated if you could take 1 minute to subscribe, rate, and review. It only takes a few seconds of your time and means so much to the show. Also, please check the box that automatic downloads will be happening for Exploring the Wine Glass. And the next best way to support Exploring the Wine Glass is to tell your friends. If you enjoy the podcast, your wine-loving friends will too. Follow me on all the socials, and finally, don't forget to head to the website exploringthewineglass.com to read the blog, sign up for the newsletter, and keep up on all the happenings. Sláinte!
You are so special, even in the...
Hey everybody, I'm Lori Budd, a UC Davis winemaking program, Spanish wine scholar, sommelier service, champagne and Côte d'Aron specialist, and a WSET Level 2 graduate. You can find Exploring the Wine Glass on all the socials, as well as your favorite podcast catchers. If you haven't subscribed yet, now's the perfect time to swipe, subscribe, rate, and review. Stay in the know about all things wine by visiting my website, exploringthewineglass.com. I promise I'll never tell you what to drink, but I'll always share what's in my glass.
Give me the sweet wine. Give me the wine.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Allure of the Poor, sponsored by Giesen Wines. Today, I am traveling virtually through the glass, and this is really kind of a cool concept that I have been interested in understanding the science of it. And so I have Duncan Shouler today with me, Director of Innovation, looking for Giesen. So welcome, Duncan.
Hi, Laurie. It's a pleasure to be here, coming from New Zealand.
Yes. Oh my God. You know, it is my bucket list. It is my bucket list to get to New Zealand, but it's such a long flight that you really got to plan a big time frame to be there. I don't want to cheap out on it. I want to go and explore it all. So got to find time
Yeah,
to get a big chunk of time.
it's a long way. I've done the flight a few times, both to the East Coast and the West Coast directly from New Zealand. And you're talking about a 17-hour flight to New York. It's a huge flight, but coming over here to Earth, it's a beautiful country. We're sort of in early spring here at the moment. It's midday in the afternoon. It's the start of spring for us, and everything's beautiful. The flowers are out. It's fantastic.
That's wonderful. So we're supposed to be starting our fall, but we are, oh my gosh, it's been 100+ degrees for like a week and a
Wow.
half. Yeah, it's been torture on people. It's been the grapes, trying to figure out when to harvest because you don't want the fall sugars because of just because of the heat. And, and then everybody's going to harvest all at the same time. And there's only so many crews. So it's a little
Absolutely.
havoc
No,
right now.
I hear you. It's sort of, I think all of us around the world and all the world's winemaking regions are experiencing challenges with the weather. They're not always the same challenges. And what we're experiencing here in Marlborough is a little bit more rainfall just before harvest, which of course gives us some disease pressure, and at the same time drought. So you're having to sort of deal with both at the same time. Unlike yourselves, obviously in California with extreme heat, I've seen that a lot. It's must be really challenging for you.
Yes, definitely. And a lot of the vineyards are dry farmed. So it's really, putting havoc, and you've got to make that decision. Are you going to pick with the false reading or end up with raisins, or don't know what's going on? Because we all know you can't trust the weather people for what they're predicting. So
this is true. Well, look, it all makes our jobs even more interesting, I suppose.
yes, absolutely. So I want to start off with talking to you about your background, because as I was kind of diving in, we have quite a few things in common. So marine biology, but in Scotland. So that was where you started. So I have marine biology also. So tell me about why marine biology, how you got there, all of the good stuff.
Fantastic. Well, look, I was born in England and grew up in England and in Scotland mostly. And I spent a little bit of my childhood growing up in Cyprus in the Mediterranean. And I would have been 7, 8, 9 years old then. And so I've got a lot of memories of being in the water and going snorkeling. That's where I first discovered the underwater world. And I fell in love with it and went through high school in Scotland. And I initially was heading towards the path of medicine. My family, a lot of my family are in medicine. And that's what I was going to do. And then one day I just said, you know what? I'm not sure I want to be a doctor. Um, I, I love marine biology and I always have. And I think that's what I want to do. So I made the decision and studied marine biology in Scotland. Studied in Scotland for 2.5 years, and then I actually finished my degree in New Zealand when I moved to New Zealand at the age of about 21. And that was probably it was a good move in a lot of ways, because Scotland is beautiful, but it's quite cold and the water is extremely cold. Whereas New Zealand is also quite cold, but it's warmer than Scotland. So all of a sudden, the marine biology in New Zealand is phenomenal over here. It's just so diverse, and there's so much under the water as there is everywhere. So I finished my degree in New Zealand and used to teach scuba diving and tutor marine biology for a few years before I made another change and got into the wine industry.
So I was all about the dolphins. That's all I wanted
Wow.
to do, was work with dolphins, until I realized that when you got your job working with the dolphins, you really couldn't afford to live life in any area that the dolphins were. Um, and then so marine biology turned into microbiology, and then microbiology turned into teaching, and somehow found our way to wine. So there are so many convoluted twists and turns to get us to wine. But how did you landed in New Zealand, lots and lots of wine. Did you just start drinking it and enjoying it and saying, hey, this is not too shabby of a gig?
Yeah, look, pretty much. I mean, I think and I probably put this down to those years in Cyprus again. I remember, growing up there, and as well as jumping in the water a lot and seeing the beautiful sea life, we would eat out probably 3 or 4 nights a week. So it was so cheap, and we'd eat in the local tavernas, seafood tavernas, and grills. Beautiful local Mediterranean food, and most of these little restaurants are next to a little vineyard, and there'd be someone in there with a donkey, sort of working the vineyard, and then mum and dad would have the local village wine. And yeah, this is in the 80s, and back then it was okay for us to have a tiny little taste and a little smell of the wine and dip our finger in it. And I found it fascinating. Anyway, so I was interested in wine, for a long time. And when I moved to New Zealand and was in marine biology for a couple of years, also had that sort of stage where I thought, you know what, marine biology is fantastic, but I'm not sure it's going to support my lifestyle choices and everything else. And as fascinating as it is, I decided to change career. And at the same time, the wine industry in New Zealand was really getting going. This is in the early 2000s. It was science-based. It was a product that I already loved. I used to taste the local wine a lot. And it all made sense. And so I went back to university and use that science background. So it's interesting. I know a couple of people who have gone from marine biology and ended up in the wine industry, and I think there's a sort of a
Oh,
strong sense of it's a lifestyle choice, isn't it? It's a lifestyle career, and if you're that way inclined, it's and it's science based. It sort of all comes together.
yeah, it absolutely does. So many people talk about that winemaking is an art and a science, and it truly is. But the idea is that you want them to taste the art, but you don't want them to taste, or I believe you want them to taste the art, but you don't really want them to taste the science that it took you to get the wine to where it is in the bottle.
I think that's a really great point, actually, Laura. I totally agree. I think that the science is that thing that happens in the background. That's where our role is to come in and allow the art to display itself in the glass. The science is there just to keep everything in check and make sure that you're giving it every chance possible to express itself as a wine, as a vineyard, as a sense of place, all those things.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I also see that you are a Pinot. That's kind of what your first love was Pinot of wine.
Yeah, look, Pinot, it's fascinating. It's a wonderful grape variety, and it is. I think going back to what we were just saying, it is possibly one of the most artistic grape varieties, in that it has this amazing ability to tell people where it comes from just from how it appears in the glass. That amazing sense of place, sense of terroir. But at the same time, it can be extremely frustrating. It's such a difficult grape variety to grow and make. And that's where the science challenge comes in. And you've got to get your viticulture right. You've got to know how to handle those grapes in the winery delicately to make a great wine. So I love it. I love a great glass of Pinot Noir, and I really enjoy making it. It's always a challenge.
It is a love-hate relationship, right?
it's, it's, it is. It is. It is. But like I say, I think that the more than anything else is that variety's ability to really showcase where it comes from.
Mhm.
We've got vineyards here in Marlborough, a couple of small single vineyard sites that are really only 2 or 3 kilometres away from each other, but quite different soil profiles. And the Pinot Noirs that come off those two vineyards are vastly different. And you can really sense the soil profile just from the structure of the wine. It's really fantastic.
I love it when people come in and they'll talk about, oh, well, I like wine XYZ because I always know what I'm getting. Every year I know what I'm getting in the bottle. And I inside am screaming and scratching at the walls of my body going, if it's tasting the same every single time you have it, and if it's you got like think about that, it's like there's no expression, there's no anything, and
Mm.
I try not to tell, I say all the time, I'll never tell you what to drink, enjoy whatever you like, but that concept of it is always the same is like screaming and scratching inside of me to yell at these people. No, you want to taste the expression, you want to see the or feel that soil. The glass should transport you to wherever that vineyard is the way it should be, shouldn't
No,
be.
that's absolutely right, and I think that that's one of the wonderful things with wine is that you don't always know what you're going to get. Every vintage is different, every variety is different, and every producer is different. It's so complex. It makes it stand out from just about any other consumer product. And look, I agree, and people sort of say, and I'm sure you get this question a lot too. What's your favorite wine? And this probably sounds a little bit cliche, but I often say my favorite wine is the next wine that I taste that I haven't had before. And it is true. I mean, that's the exciting thing with opening a new wine from a new producer or a new region that you've never tried before, and you're just excited. You're like, this is going to be interesting. I'm going to try this. I may or may not like it, but the whole process is that experience.
Right, absolutely. All right, so before we get into the actual wines, let's just talk a bit about Giesen as a winery itself. So, very much into sustainability. You guys have a lot of initiatives. So, can you tell us first where Giesen is, how people can find Giesen, and then, like where you're located? And then let's talk about those sustainability initiatives that are pretty important to you guys.
Absolutely. So, well, Giesen was established just over 40 years ago. And it was established by three German brothers, Theo, Alex, and Marcel. They moved over from Germany in the late 70s, and then in the early 80s, planted some grapes and started making some wine. And they actually started the winery and vineyard down in Canterbury, which is in the middle of the South Island of New Zealand. And there's a wine growing region down there called Waipara, so they were just south of that. And then pretty quickly, they started to see that there were some exciting things happening in the region of Marlborough, and in particular with Sauvignon Blanc. People had just started planting it, and right from the get-go, when people tasted those grapes and tasted those first ferments and those first wines, people could see there was something pretty special there. The Sauvignon Blanc was very, very distinctive, and so they invested in Marlborough, and they purchased land in Marlborough and planted grapes in Marlborough and started making Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc, and that was really the start of it. And now we're very much a Marlborough-based business. Nearly all of our products are from Marlborough, most of them are, but we do source fruit from other parts of New Zealand as well. And our winery is in Marlborough. So we've got a large winery in Marlborough that makes anything from large-scale Sauvignon Blanc, which is very classic in style, right down to tiny little batches of Chardonnay and Pinot Noir from single vineyards, and now, of course, zero alcohol as well. Sustainability, look, it's an important thing for everybody, and especially in the wine industry, and increasingly so, as it should be. Now, we have something in New Zealand called Sustainable Wine Growing New Zealand, and Giesen are certified SWNZ, SWNZ, so you'll see that on the label. And that means that we have a certification that every year we're audited for our sustainability practices, right from the vineyard through to the winery. How much water are you using in the vineyards? How much power are we using at the winery? Now, that's the standard, that's the certification. But I think one thing that Giesen is great at is sort of trying to go above and beyond and innovate and get creative with what they're doing. And you can see that in the products, things like zero alcohol wine. Not everyone's doing it. They are quite different and quite innovative, and they've got a really important place in the market. But what we like to do is say, well, how can we do things differently to other people to have a lower footprint, change the way we do things, revisit how we make classic wine. We've done a couple of things over the last few years. One of them is one of our wineries is replacing presses with decanters, decanter technology. Now, that's a very interesting way of extracting juice from grapes. So it's juice separation. You can't do it with every variety, but it works extremely well with Sauvignon Blanc. And it uses much less water. You get very good consistent extraction rate. So you're maximizing your juice extraction per ton, and it's very high quality juice. And you use a fraction of the power. And basically by using these decanters, you cut out 3 or 4 different processes. You don't have to cold settle anymore or float the wine. You're not pressing the wine, and you have no lees sediment to deal with. So all of those processes disappear, and you manage to reduce your footprint massively. And what we love about it, just more than anything else, is the quality is fantastic. We just won at Mundus Vidi in Europe. We just won best Sauvignon Blanc of show with one of our wines made from almost entirely decanter technology. So the quality's there as well. So yes, there's a lot of initiatives going on there.
Can you, I'm sorry, I'm gonna veer off and go down that rabbit hole for a second. So how you're bringing the Sauv Blanc in, and then what are you actually doing to it in this new process, or in this different process?
Yeah. So most sort of larger scale Sauvignon Blanc and Marlborough is made with machine harvested fruit, and that's a product of 2 things. One is the scale of it, and like we've mentioned before, in this day and age, all of that fruit is ready to be picked at the same time. It's literally like a 3-week period in the Marlborough region. It's a relatively big wine region. In 3 weeks, you've got to get all the fruit in, so you've got to harvest it fast. So you machine harvest. The other side to it as well is that the thiol compounds, or the precursors to the thiol compounds that give Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc its distinctive flavour, exist largely in the skins. So a bit of skin contact is really good to maximise those flavours. So machine harvesting helps with that. Fruit arrives at the winery machine harvested, and traditionally it would go into a hopper, which then, of course, goes through a destemmer and pumps it into the press, and it's pressed. Off it goes, cloudy juice, settles, and it's racked and then fermented, warmed, fermented, and then you filter the lees sediment, and then we use that. With a decanter, the machine harvested fruit comes into the winery and goes straight into the decanter. Now, a decanter is like an elongated centrifuge on its side. Now, fruit goes in one end and basically gets spun. There's a rotating coil in the inside and a very fast rotating drum on the outside, and it uses centrifugal force to separate the liquids from the solids, including all of the sediment. So all of the sediment comes out with the skins and seeds, and what comes out the other end is basically clear juice, or juice as clear as you want it
Wow.
for fermentation. And it hasn't been chilled as well, so you're not having to warm it back up again. You're not having to chill it down in the first place and then warm it up. It goes straight through to fermentation. Now, one of the big advantages is that process is so fast. If you're doing traditional cold settling, the process is going to take you 2, 3, even 4 days before you've got something that you're fermenting. With decanter technology, you can be fermenting within 5 or 6 hours of the fruit arriving at the winery. And that means we're reducing any impact of oxidation and preserving those thiol precursors that give it the brightness of flavor.
Is this
So
new, or has this been being done for a while?
it's not new. It's pretty new in New Zealand. We're the only ones who have adopted it on such a scale for juice extraction in New Zealand. It has been used a bit in Europe, certainly in Germany. It's been used before. It's been used in South Africa. The technology traditionally has been used largely in, for example, solid separation from things like wastewater and things like that. So you can have different types of decanters for different purposes. But also, vegetable. You could put carrots in and get carrot juice out. It sounds really unromantic, but that's not very arty. But the science is fantastic because of
Yeah.
those reasons. Because you're reducing oxidation, shortening the amount of time between the fruit being picked and fermenting, you're getting these great quality wins with it as well.
Oh, that's incredible. I love learning about new stuff. That is really incredible. Okay, so with these sustainable initiatives that you have you seen an actual difference from like maybe pre die hard sustainability practices versus now? Like what are some changes that you've seen either in the fruit or the end product of the wine that you could say, yeah, that's because of these practices we've instilled?
Yeah, look, it's a really good question. I think certainly if I was to use the decanters as an example, certainly we have seen a bit of a shift in the style of our Sauvignon Blanc. And because you're getting a little bit less oxidation, you're getting more bright fruit flavors. The pH on the wines is slightly lower as well, which is interesting, and that's probably because of a little bit less time on skins in the press, and you're not squeezing the skins at the end of the press cycle, getting the pressings, which has got a higher pH. So the pH has dropped very slightly. If anything, you probably get very slightly less body, and that's why it's not necessarily a great method of extraction for other varieties like Chardonnay. But with Sauvignon Blanc, where you're really looking, for me, with Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc, aroma and freshness trumps body.
Okay.
And body is great, and you want that, and there's ways to get that later on in the process. But more than anything, you're trying to capture flavor. So it's probably producing a slightly lighter, fresher style, which is really attractive, very refreshing and drinkable. So that has certainly helped. And other things, I mean, apart from that, the thing with sustainability initiatives is it takes years to really see the difference. If we're doing things like using less water on certain vineyards, we'll see differences. But before we've really seen a consistent change in wine style, it probably takes a long time. But certainly, obviously, what we are watching closely is what is our energy usage, what is our water usage, and all of those things.
Right. Wonderful. So, Giesen actually has quite the portfolio. You have both alcohol and low alcohol and de-alcoholized wines. Plus you've got tiers of, I guess levels of what wines go where. You have single varieties, you have blend, like you really are doing a whole bunch of things going on. And is it is it nerve-wracking kind of to like we're going to start talking about the de-alcoholized and I want to go into that process later on, but like to keep all of these different things, is it mayhem? Because like you said, you've
It's
only got like 3 weeks to harvest and
Yeah. Yeah, look, it is a challenge. Hopefully, it's not mayhem. Mind you, vintage wouldn't be vintage without a little bit of mayhem. It's always got
That's
to have a
true.
little bit of sort of organized chaos, which makes it so much fun. But it's I'm very, very lucky. At the winery, we have a phenomenal team of winemakers. We've got a guy called Jeremy who heads up our winemaking team, a very experienced winemaker with Sauvignon Blanc. And we've set it up in a way that different people specialize in different areas. Everybody can do everything, but we've got one team that looks after zero alcohol, one team that looks after the larger production wines, one team that looks after the really small production wines, and they're all working together, but they focus on their area of expertise. And that means without that, it would be really, you wouldn't sleep at night because you've got so much going on. You need that confidence that someone is there looking after it all. What is challenging, of course, is that all of these products are so different. So they all have different regulations, different compliance in every different market. And so you've got to be on top of all of that. And that's very, very important. And certainly when you go into things like zero alcohol, it's a whole different kettle of fish. And the regulations we mentioned earlier, things like ingredients and nutritional panels on the back label, those things are obviously quite different. A lot going on and a lot to think about. But like anything, if you've got the right people in the right places, it's all taken care of.
And when did Giesen start producing these de-alcoholized wines?
We started trialing in 2019. Now which seems like a long time ago, but it really isn't. I mean, it's 4.5 years, 5 years, which is nothing really, isn't it, in the lifespan of a winery. And it started because we had a company-wide health and well-being initiative. It's one of those ones where you choose to sign up if you want to, and get yourself a Fitbit or something that can count steps. And you've got to be careful about how many calories you're intaking. It's a competition who can do the most steps, and you've got to commit to certain things. And I signed up, and the winemaking team all signed up. And then we kind of read the small print, and one of those commitments was that for the course of the month, you couldn't drink any alcohol. So we pretty much held an emergency meeting to discuss how we were going to get through a month without drinking any wine. And one of the obvious things was, well, let's go out and see if we can find some zero alcohol wine or de-alcoholized wine. Let's go and have a go. And we did that, and we found there wasn't very much at all. There's very little choice. And what we did find was okay, but it wasn't necessarily what we really wanted out of the wine. So then we said, let's try and make some. And all the stars aligned just as we came up with that idea and started saying, let's trial making our own just for a bit of fun. The technology became available in New Zealand. Spinning cone technology became available. And we were able to contract space on a spinning cone and run some trials. And we did it with Sauvignon Blanc. We put a wine together. We loved it. Our general manager loved it. The sales and marketing team loved it and said, you know what, we might actually be onto something here. So then we said, let's do it. And Giesen, being the company that Giesen is very fast moving and dynamic, like I said, and innovative. So it wasn't a long time before we said, we're off, we're going to have a go at this. And by 2020, we started making it regularly. And then by 2021, we'd installed our first spinning cone of our own. And then it's just grown exponentially from there.
And so let's talk about the concept of you calling it de-alcoholized versus zero alcohol. Why does Giesen feel that they want to differentiate between those two terms? And now, a word from our sponsor. Looking for a unique wine tasting experience? Look no further than Giesen Wines' tasting room in downtown Paso Robles. Located on the corner of 13th and Pine, this charming spot is not your average winery. Founded by passionate wine lovers who also happen to be the brains behind Cab Franc Day, Giesen Wines is proud to call themselves home of Blanc de Franc. This crisp and elegant white wine has gained a cult following and is just one example of their superb offerings. With over 10 years of consistently receiving 90+ ratings from top critics, these wines are sure to impress even the most discerning palates. So come raise a glass with us and celebrate great wines at Giesen Wines' tasting room.
Yeah, so it's quite as it should be. It's quite strongly regulated. So in most markets, if you want to call yourself low alcohol, you've got to be below 1.15% alcohol. If you want to call yourself de-alcoholized, you've got to be below 0.5% alcohol. If you want to be alcohol free, that's got to be below 0.05. Now that's quite tricky. Now if you buy a regular organic orange juice from the market, it's going to have more than that for sure. As with grape juice, in fact, bread would for the most part have more than that for sure. So we have gone with de-alcoholized. Now, what that means is that the zero alcohol wines, our de-alcoholized wines, have an alcohol content that is similar to fruit juices. You would need to drink something like 20 bottles before you've had the equivalent of a glass of regular wine. So big difference there. So it is essentially, has no alcohol, a tiny amount. But if you go to 0.05, there's a big challenge. When we use the spinning cone, and we'll go through this in more detail, but we create a wine aroma that it does have some alcohol. Think of it like a perfume, which is alcohol based as well. And we can add that back into the zero alcohol wine to bring the flavor and aroma back. Now, we couldn't do that if we were trying to get it below 0.05. And so it's very, very difficult at that level to have any varietal characteristics. The only way you're going to get flavor really at that level is mostly by adding flavorings, which is what we don't want to do.
Which you don't want to do. Right. Okay. So before we do a deep dive into it, I poured myself the first wine I have, which is the Sparkling Brut. So tell us what method are you using? Is it like a Charmat method? Is it what's the fruit? Tell us this process of how you get the sparkling.
So that one, so that's a base made of 3 predominant grape varieties. The main part of the blend is Sauvignon Blanc. Now we use Sauvignon Blanc because that gives us a lovely a citrus note and just a touch of tropical fruit. It also brings lovely fresh acidity. So we really love that freshness of acidity in a sparkling wine. And then we blend in some Pinot Gris. So the Pinot Gris is giving a little bit of body, a bit of natural sweetness, and a slightly different fruit profile, a little bit of apples and pears. And I find it quite interesting when you combine the character of Pinot Gris in this style, the sort of the apples and the pears, a little bit of elderflower, along with the citrus of Sauvignon Blanc, you end up in a place that's a little bit Prosecco-esque. It's quite an interesting flavor profile. And then we blend in a small amount of Chardonnay, and the Chardonnay is really there just to sort of just give it a bit of savory mealiness and just a bit more complexity. It's only a tiny amount. It's a very fruit-driven wine. So that's the base blend. Then what we do is we de-alcoholize the base blend. And then we put the bits and pieces back together again. So we use spinning cone technology to remove the alcohol, and we create this wine aroma. And again, we'll go into this in more depth. But we create the wine aroma, add as much of it back in as we can to get to about 0.4% alcohol and get the flavor and aroma profile we're after. And then after that process, very quickly, we then chill it, and it's carbonated. So it is carbonated. Now, of course, the challenge is to make a secondary ferment, a method traditional 0% alcohol wine is essentially impossible because you've got to go through that re-fermentation process. So carbonation is pretty much the only option. Having said that, we are looking at creating something with secondary ferment, but that's down the track. And so it's carbonated cold and up to just below the level of a regular champagne style wine in terms of full carbonation, around about 9,000 milligrams per liter of CO2, and then it's bottled under pressure. With cork. So very simple. We're looking for a little bit fruity, fresh and inviting. We want it to be dry on the palate. Now, without alcohol, you lose a lot of sweetness. So it does have more sweetness than you think. It's actually got 20 grams per litre sugar.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, about double what a champagne would have. But it doesn't taste that sweet because you don't have the sweetness of alcohol. And then that balances with that nice sort of limey acidity, which just gives it a bit of a dryness to the finish. It's just a really fun, playful zero alcohol wine that, chilled. You can have it as it is. You can put a strawberry in it, a splash of orange juice, have fun with it. And it's not sweet, which is nice. It does have some sugar, but it's very, very low compared to most of the others, and certainly very low compared to fruit juices.
Yeah, it has there's so much going on the nose of it. I do get like some of that, like you were saying, that Prosecco-esque, that green apple, the citrus, maybe a little pineapple, a little bit of that grapefruit kind of in that area. But then the
Yeah,
finish is lime. Like you get
yeah,
that kind of lime essence
that
going
tartness.
yeah.
Yeah, and that, of course, that's that malic acid that we'll have in Sauvignon Blanc because we haven't put it through malolactic conversion. So that flick of malic acid on the finish just brings that green apple and liminess. And I find that to me just gives it energy on the finish and just brightens it and keeps it refreshing. And one of the most important things I think with zero alcohol wine is when you make them, you've got to look at it quite differently to making a regular wine, of course. But when we make a regular wine, you'll set up, a series of trials in front of you on the bench, and you'll have, let's say, you're doing a sugar trial. How sweet do we want this wine to be? You've got 5 options. Choose your favorite one, and then we'll go with that. And we can do that with a wine. If you do that with a zero alcohol wine, you tend to get a skewed result because most people will go for something that's quite sweet. Because when you taste it with just one sip, that the sweetness replaces the sweetness of alcohol and gives it body and makes you think, oh, that's the one. However, if you then get that person to get themselves a whole bottle of that and take it home and drink 2 or 3 glasses, by the end of the first glass, they're going to start to find it quite sweet and it becomes
Oh,
off-putting. So when we do anything with zero alcohol wine, we do the trial, but then we invite all the winemaking team to actually take it home and try it. So we want something that's moreish. We want it to be refreshing. We want it to be dry in style. When you put the glass down, 2 or 3 minutes later, we want you to be thinking, "Oh, I want to pick it up again and have another sip because I'm salivating and it's refreshing."
okay. And so when you first started this concept, did did other wineries think you were kind of like crazy for like it seems like now it's much more popular, and that's another question I'm going to ask you. But when you first started, was Giesen pretty much the only people making it?
In New Zealand, pretty much,
Okay.
we were pretty much the only ones doing it, and certainly, yeah, there was. I say this a lot. I say that the category is fascinating. It's grown very, very rapidly, and it's very consumer driven. So the consumers seem to love it. They've wanted it for a long time. They've wanted to be able to have an adult drinking experience without alcohol, and whether that's because they're not drinking, whether they're just having a night off, whether they're driving, and maybe they're pregnant. There's a number of reasons, and that consumer has always been there, but the product and the choice and the quality hasn't necessarily been there. So they're really driving the growth of the category. But if anything, that the trade is really still they're getting there, but the trade and the industry itself is still quite unsure about it because wine is. And I get it. Wine is a special product. It's a sacred product. You will love it. It's so complex. It's a fascinating product, and the idea of it without alcohol is almost sacrilege.
Right.
But when you stop and think about it, you say, well, do you know what? If someone can have as close as you can get to a really good wine experience without alcohol, and they can enjoy, hopefully, the great things about wine. So balance, acidity, structure, flavor, fruit, a sense of place without lots of sugar and complexity, structure, then, and they can have all of that without alcohol. That's great because it means people who don't drink or choose not to or aren't drinking on that particular occasion can still have some of that experience. But yeah, we do still get a bit of pushback from some people, and some people are not really into the idea, and I totally understand. I respect that. But I think as it grows, I think we'll see more acceptance and hopefully more and more acceptance that the two can live side by side.
Right.
Regular wine and de-alcoholized wine can live side by side, and it just gives the consumer, gives people a choice that they can choose if they want.
Right. And so do you see a rise now, with the whole big, millennials that aren't drinking as much and things like that, the statistics that they're not drinking. Um, I see in the tasting room, I can almost guarantee this sounds horrible, but when a group comes in of that certain age or whatever, I can pretty much guarantee they are just doing a tasting and they are not buying anything. And
Mm,
it's pretty
mm.
consistent. And so, like, are you seeing that this group, they're looking for two different things? They're looking for an experience, but they're also not drinking as much. Are you seeing that this is a rising factor for Giesen's de-alcoholized?
It is, and certainly, our biggest market and our biggest growth is in the USA, and certainly in the USA, the growth is driven by millennials, and but the growth is driven by millennials who are moderating, not abstaining. So, like you said, they're not people who don't drink wine. They do drink wine. They just want to integrate something into their lifestyle, so it's easier for them to reduce their total alcohol intake. And that's really fascinating. I mean, I'm a bit older than millennial, but when I sort of see younger friends of mine or cousins of mine or nieces and nephews who are very much Gen Z or millennial, they've got a very different outlook to what they consume to perhaps what we do. So that's really important. Having said that, across the of age groups, right up to boomers, people are drinking more low alcohol options and drinking less alcohol in general. And I think that's probably because of a bit of negative press. This is where it gets really interesting, is that, like I said, I'm a strong believer in the two existing side by side. And I still believe that, I certainly drink a glass of wine most nights, if not more than one glass. I love wine. And I think if you drink it the right way and in moderation, it's a very healthy part of your lifestyle. But then I think there are occasions where you can, like you said, if you're driving or you're going to a party and you just want to moderate, the zero alcohol can be really helpful for that. But no, the category growth is across most generations of drinking age.
And so next I have the rosé. So, green screen. There we go. So tell us about the rosé. What is it a rosé of, and how's this made? Is it direct press? Is it Saignée? Is it something completely different because you're doing it as a zero alcohol?
Yeah, yeah. So this one here, this is mostly, the base is mostly Pinot Gris. Now we do put a little bit of rosé base in there as well. So a little bit of Pinot Noir and Merlot that's been pressed and produced into rosé. But the predominant part of the base wine is in fact Pinot Gris. And as you know, of course, Pinot Gris isn't rosé. I mean, it can be pinkish if you really want it to be, but it isn't. It's white because we press it very, very quickly. We're using Pinot Gris for that texture and for those pears and orchard fruit characteristics. Now we bring in a little bit of Pinot Noir and Merlot rosé to bring something of a red fruit nature to the wine. A little bit of raspberry, strawberry, and then with the color of the wine, a little bit of actual red wine, usually Syrah because it's so lovely and dark. Yeah, so the Pinot Gris as a base just gives that lovely texture, slightly lower acidity, which is nice for the rosé. And then the Pinot Noir and Merlot bring a little bit of a red berry characteristic to the blend, which I think is really important for a rosé. You've got to have a little bit of that sort of raspberry, strawberry, even cranberry characteristic there, which just makes it very inviting. And we do add a little bit of red wine as well, if required, just to get the color where we want it to be a nice bright color, not too dark, but just enough so it's got that nice appearance in the glass. And then very much like the zero alcohol sparkling that you tried before, it's then de-alcoholized. We put those bits and pieces back together to bring the aroma back into the party, and then it's bottled here in Marlborough.
Okay. So let's take that dive down the actual centrifuge type concept. You're saying that you're able to capture the aromatics that you can then add back. So how does that work? It's probably easier to visually see it happening, but like how does How does that work? How are you capturing aromatics?
Yeah, so we're using something called a spinning cone. Now, a spinning cone is actually used in the perfume industry to capture aroma to use for perfume production. And basically, it is a form of vacuum distillation. So what you're trying to do with wine and with just about any aroma, if you're trying to extract aroma, and certainly if you're trying to extract alcohol from wine, you're trying to do it at as lower temperatures as you possibly can so that you don't corrupt the aroma. As you know, these chemical compounds are very delicate. Things like thiols and esters don't respond well to heat. So we're trying to remove the alcohol at very, very low temperatures. And basically what we're doing is, I'm going to use a pen actually as a little bit of a visual. So it is literally a series of cones that spin inside a housing. Now this pen is going to be a central drive shaft that spins. And attached to that are a series of cones, upturned cones. And that spins. And so therefore those cones on that column spin with it. Now, then you've got a housing around the outside of it, and attached to that housing are also cones that are in between the cones attached to the column, and they don't spin. They stay where they are. The wine comes in the top, and from the bottom comes steam. The steam comes up through the column, and the wine comes down, and because this is spinning, it spins up the side of the cone, drops down to the cone on the outside, which funnels it down onto the cone below, which is spinning, and it spins up the side, down, up, down, creating a very large surface area. So now you've got a vacuum, you've got a very large surface area.
I'm envisioning like a line to Disneyland.
Yeah. Yeah. Something like that. And so now you can distill alcohol at very low temperatures. So you're looking at below 100 degrees Fahrenheit to distill that off. And when we use the spinning cone, we run the wine through twice. The first time we run it through, we run it at really low temperatures, and we put the wine through quite quickly. So the only thing that's coming out are the most volatile components. Some alcohol will come out, but all of the volatiles will come out, and those are mostly flavor and aroma compounds, esters, you name it, terpenes, even thiol compounds as well come out. So they're going to come out, and they're going to come out in some sort of solvent, some sort of liquid, and that of course is alcohol, grape alcohol, because it's not bound, but it wants to stay inside that solvent. And now you've got essentially a wine perfume. And it's the same way they make perfumes of different aromatics in the perfume industry to make a concentrated rose petal aroma, or you name it. Okay. So now you've removed the alcohol, and your wine that's gone in has gone from around about 13% alcohol probably down to about 11 or 11.5. Okay. And it has no aroma anymore. The aroma is gone. So now you can turn up the temperature, because you don't need to worry about protecting the aroma anymore, because you've taken it out and you've got it over here. You turn the temperature up slightly, you reduce the speed, so there's more contact time, and that allows you to remove all of the remaining alcohol. And now you've got a wine without alcohol and without aroma, and then you take the aroma and dose it back in until you get to about 0.4% alcohol, and then you've got your zero alcohol wine.
Wow. And so when you're collecting the thiols and the terpenes and all of that stuff, you're just collecting it in the solvent, and then I'm assuming some sort of mathematical formulation to tell you how much of that to add back, and it depends probably on the variety, because the different, right?
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, when you add it back, you just look at what's the alcohol content of the alcohol-free wine. It's usually about 0.1. What's the alcohol content of the spirit, the aroma spirit? It's usually around about 60 to 65% ABV, and that will tell you how much of it you can add back in. Okay. And you're always going to add a little bit less than you think you can, just because you don't want to overshoot the mark. Put it in, make sure it's had a good mix, and then recheck the alcohol. And if you've got a little bit of space for a bit more, you might add a little bit more. And then, so the process in essence is quite simple. It is a complicated process, and like anything, it's only as good as the technology that you have, and probably more importantly than that, it's only as good as the people who are using that technology. Okay. So you've got to have really good trained people doing it, which we're fortunate at Giesen. We've got a fantastic team, and that's what they do. They operate the spinning cone, and that's basically what they do. So they're world experts at it now.
And if you're picking a Pinot Noir to be in your alcohol lineup, and a Pinot Noir to be in your de-alcoholized lineup, are you looking for different chemistry aspects in the vineyard to pull in, or are you able to harvest all that Pinot Noir at the same time, per se?
Yeah, more the latter. So what we're doing, and this is, and everyone has a different approach to zero alcohol wine. Our approach is the most important part of the whole process. The second most important part I've already mentioned is the technology and the people that run it. But the most important part to start off with is that you have a really good wine in the first place. So you've got to make a really great example of Pinot Noir. You can't make a good zero alcohol Pinot Noir without a good regular Pinot Noir to start off with. So you want to get it, you want to get the flavor fully right. You especially want to get the tannin fully right, because once you've removed the alcohol, the sweetness of alcohol and the body and depth of alcohol isn't there, so the tannin really stands out. And if that tannin is green, or if there's too much seed tannin, it's going to be quite aggressive on the palate. So you want right tannin. You want to avoid too much seed extraction during fermentation. So your pump over regime, your pigeage or remontage, whatever you're doing, you don't want to do that too late in the fermentation. You don't want to extract too much seed tannin when you've got alcohol, and make a relatively soft wine, and then it's where you want it to be. The other thing you really want to think about is acidity, because when you remove the alcohol, the acidity becomes very pronounced. So you've got to be especially careful with varieties that don't go through malolactic conversion, or that you don't want to go through malolactic conversion, such as Sauvignon Blanc, because if there's too much malic acid, it'll look really harsh. So you want to get the fruit fully ripe so that the malic acid levels in the fruit when you pick are low enough.
Very interesting. And you have, right now we're in October, and so Giesen has two main months that they really are promoting the de-alcoholized wines as that lifestyle in that month. So I give kudos to whoever came up with the names, because I like Dry July. It's much better than Dry January. It's so much better. So Dry July and Sober October. So kudos to whoever came up with those names. But do you do special events at the winery to celebrate these months, or
Yeah, no, look, we do a few things. I mean, certainly our marketing team are doing most of the work. They're doing some great stuff on social media and organizing events, which are really fantastic. At the winery, yeah, what we like to do is we like to do some tastings every week at the winery, and maybe during Sober October, one of those tastings might be a zero alcohol wine. We love to do a tasting of a new product that we've released. And certainly, make sure that everyone at the winery, all the staff, are experiencing the products and hopefully enjoying them and understanding how they might integrate them into their own lives if they choose to do so. So it's pretty fun. And look at what it's all about is it's more than anything, it's just saying, hey, just give it a go. I mean, if you want to have a go, if you want to try a zero alcohol wine, this is a great opportunity to do it. It's a month where we're sort of celebrating that. It doesn't mean you can't drink regular wine. If you want to go sober for the whole month, then do that. If you want to go semi-sober, do that too. And it's a good example to pick up a bottle of good quality zero alcohol wine, cook a nice meal, and see how you enjoy it with your family and friends.
Wonderful.
One great thing with zero alcohol wine is it does actually go really well with food, because it's got acidity and structure and complex dry flavors.
And I would guess, lots of times when you have a higher alcohol wine, it's difficult to find a food pairing because of that alcohol. Foods can kind of intensify that alcohol. So it's a nice opportunity.
No, that's right. That's absolutely right.
And so the last wine I have is actually your newest in the lineup of de-alcoholized, and this is the Chardonnay. So tell us about the fruit, and then I also want to talk about, we kind of hinted about it a little bit, but these nutritional labels on them. So
yeah.
tell us
So
about the Chardonnay.
So the Chardonnay is a New Zealand Chardonnay. So we source the Chardonnay from a few different spots in New Zealand. Like I said, we're based in Marlborough, but we use a combination of Chardonnay from Marlborough and also from the North Island, from Hawke's Bay. Hawke's Bay is a little bit warmer, and you get slightly riper, more sort of stone fruit driven flavors from Hawke's Bay and slightly lower acidity, which is really helpful. Marlborough brings a really nice citrus characteristic to the wine. And then we also use a little bit of fruit from Waipara, which is down near Christchurch and where Giesen first started. And the Chardonnay down there, it's a little bit aromatic. It's got a lovely chalky texture to it as well. It's a bit of limestone down there. So it's really quite nice. And so we put a nice blend together and then go through the same de-alcoholization process that we've discussed. Now, one of the advantages with Chardonnay is, well, there's a couple. One of them is that, of course, you have oak, and one of the challenges with zero alcohol wine is just getting flavor in there. And oak is another flavor that adds to the flavor profile, adds to the complexity of the wine, and just gives it a bit more structure as well on the palate. So the oak helps, and also the acidity, because the Chardonnay has gone through malolactic conversion. You don't have such a harsh acidity in the wine, so it does make it creamier. If people prefer that lower acidity style, Chardonnay is a great option. But it's delicate. It's a delicate wine, but it matches really nicely with simple seafood, delicate seafood. It's got a lovely simplicity to it, a little subtle oak, a little bit of stone fruit, a little bit of citrus, and a little bit of spice. And it just makes a really refreshing, cold afternoon drink. It's quite nice. In terms of the back label, so our zero alcohol wines in most markets are regarded as a food product. So they're not actually a wine because they're below the minimum alcohol level for wine. So in the USA, for example, it's governed by the FDA rather than the TTB. And so therefore it has to have a label that's akin to a food, like a fruit juice. So it has ingredients on the back and a nutritional panel. Now, the nutritional panel is always quite interesting because there's not much in it. I mean, it doesn't have protein or fiber. It has calories, and the calories, of course, come mostly in a zero alcohol wine. They're coming from any sugar that's in there, which is not much. And our zero alcohol wines are quite a lot drier than just about everyone else's. But the calories are much lower than a regular wine because, as you know, alcohol has a lot more calories per gram than sugar. And so when you remove 13.5% alcohol, you very significantly reduce the calorific value. So low in calories, and then you've got things like sodium on there and bits and pieces, which is quite nice. It's nice for people to know what they're consuming and what they're actually putting into their bodies.
And what led to you started with Sauvignon Blanc, correct? That was your first one. Then you went to the rosé?
Sauvignon Blanc, Pinot Gris, Rosé, Riesling, and a red. The red came out of so we've got a premium red, which is a Bordeaux blend, a Riesling, which is made in sort of Germanic Spätlese style, so a little bit sweeter, a nice limey, sort of lovely sort of style of aromatic Riesling, and then the sparkling, and then the Chardonnay. Now it started with Sauvignon because Sauvignon is it's our signature variety here in Marlborough, and it lends itself quite well to being de-alcoholized because it's got such a recognizable aroma. We wanted something to start off with that people could see that zero alcohol wine can actually have a sense of place, and when you smell that zero alcohol Sauvignon Blanc, you can actually smell that it's from New Zealand, and that's really important to us. So
where do you find this? Where do you find Giesen de-alcoholized? Like, I'm going into a store because it's not wine, so where are we looking for it?
Yeah, so you can find it in Whole Foods and a lot of major retailers now in the USA.
So it's in Whole Foods and whatever, but where is it being shelved? Is it by the wine? Is it by juice? Where does somebody go into the store and look for it?
Great question. So for the most part, it is with regular wine.
Okay.
And I think that's where it should be. In some markets and in potentially some states, you might find that it needs to be with juices, and that will just be legislation in those states. But mostly you'll find it with regular wine. And I think that, like I said, I think that's where it should be, because you're choosing something that's sort of a wine alternative. It's if you're looking for a juice, you'd go to the fruit juice or the soft drink aisle. And it is a wine. Here in New Zealand, it's actually very interesting. It's still classified as a wine because there's no minimum alcohol percentage. So in New Zealand, it is actually a regular wine, and it sits alongside regular wine. So you'll find it in wine aisles and wine areas of supermarkets, etc. And usually they'll have a little area that is specifically for zero alcohol or low alcohol products.
Excellent. Well, I want to thank you very much for coming on. All three of them were incredible. I like the idea. I'm kind of more like you. I'm going to have a glass of wine pretty much every night or two. But it's nice to always have that option that I can still put something if I'm at a party and I'm the designated driver. It's nice to have this where I can still feel like I'm drinking the wine, but I'm not at all putting myself or my people, put my peeps in danger. So it's a very nice option for that.
Yeah, no, look, I agree, and I think that's what it's all about. It's just giving people choice, and we're not saying to people that regular wine is bad. I mean, we make more regular wine than we make zero alcohol wine. It's we all love it, but it's just giving people choice. And I think if you're out with friends and you're having food, and let's say you're driving home or you just want a night off, it's nice to have the ability to have a bottle and a wine glass and something that has adult flavor. That's really important. It's got to taste like an adult drink. And for example, the red version needs tannin, so it needs structure, and something that goes well with your food and just helps you feel like you're integrated in everyone around you who might be having a glass of regular wine. And we certainly say to people, have a bit of fun with it as well. You don't need to drink it as it comes out of the bottle. If you want to have fun, make a mimosa with the sparkling, or have fun with fruits and whatever you like. Spritzers, it's go for gold.
Absolutely, I can see it. I really like it. Thank you so much, because I'm like that whole concept of de-alcoholing, de-alcoholization is a really cool concept of how you do that. And I just think it's fantastic to have options. Let everybody be happy with whatever they're drinking, and this gives a whole other option that is safe.
No, absolutely. And I think what's exciting is that it's still relatively early days. I think we're going to see the quality of zero alcohol wines get better and better and better, and we're going to see a lot more choice as well. We're going to see other varieties coming out, other styles, and that's going to be fantastic.
Wonderful. Well, thank you again for your time and everything. And I have a little bit left, so I will raise my glass and say slancha. Thank you. This has been another episode of Exploring the Wine Glass. Thanks for listening. If you have suggestions on what topics you would like me to discuss, please reach out on social media. You can find me on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook as Exploring the Wine Glass. I am also on LinkedIn as Lori Hoyt-Budd. Of course, you can always email me at exploringthewineglass@gmail.com and sign up for my newsletter at exploringthewineglass.com. If you enjoyed what you heard, please rate, review, and subscribe to help others find me more easily. And most importantly, tell your wine-loving friends, because if you like the podcast, they will too. Podcast music is Wine by Giesen. Until next week, slancha.
I want a nice glass right now.